That's like I was watching last night, Major League 2, and Willie Mays Hayes looks at Tom Berenger's, I can't remember Tom Berenger's character, and Willie Mays is limping, and Tom Berenger goes, man, you got to get your knee right, and Willie Mays Hayes goes, man, I hit for power now. It's like, oh.
I tell you, if you'd let me hit from second base, I'd have hit some bombs.
Yeah, there you go. All right, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Appreciate you, my man. Thanks for hanging in for me while I was in the elevator.
There you go.
Thanks, pal. All right. Post-game show, Terry Ford in the elevator for a bit. Out of the elevator, and we're ready to rock and roll. Man, we have not much to talk about, right? Chase, what a weekend. What a weekend. We have baseball taking 2 out of 3 against the service academies. And just a really cool event to be able to play Army, Navy, and Air Force in the same weekend. So that's awesome. Also, obviously, women's basketball, a skull kicking of Ole Miss at CLA, and now having a share of the SEC regular season title again for Dawn Staley and her crew. Then you had men's basketball with a nice win. We don't get to say that much. Nice win over Mississippi State, scoring, 97 points against the Bulldogs. So that was a nice little weekend treat. So you had women's basketball winning. You had men's basketball winning. Baseball taking 2 out of 3. In theory, all that's good. We'll dig more into it as we move through the show. Paul Maneri, the Gamecocks head baseball coach, will be with us bottom of the hour, 3:30, to talk about the weekend and then moving forward with Queens and Clemson and all that good stuff. That'll be with Coach here in just a little bit. Also, the Olympics was phenomenal. The hockey was so good yesterday, man. It just was. Look, I love me some hockey. I'm not the puck head I used to be because I just don't have time. Because I've just never worked in markets that, cares a lot about the NHL. So as the years have gone on, and I have to pay attention to other things, like here we pay attention to the Gamecocks and the SEC and college football, and kind of important to dig into all that stuff, plus obviously, basketball, baseball, things of that nature. And then obviously we'll always talk some NFL before it's all said and done. Some of the other things I really like, I've kind of had to push back a little bit because most listeners don't care about yapping NHL or NBA or whatever. But I do love me some NHL hockey. I love me some hockey. NHL playoffs, I think, are the most fabulous playoffs in sports professionally. No offense to the NFL or Major League Baseball or the NBA, but the Stanley Cup playoffs are just a different animal. They just are. And just hockey players in general, and we'll talk about it later. You saw some of that on display yesterday. If you're just a sports fan who wanted to watch, the Olympic gold medal game because it had a lot of buzz around the country, and you wanted to see if the U.S. could break this drought of 46 years and win a gold medal, and you're just a cash, or you're just a sports fan who wanted to watch that event, even though you really don't know a lot about it. Just got a taste of the different kind of human being a hockey player is. So we'll get into that later as well. We will. We got a ton of stuff today. As we circle back out of baseball, taking 2 out of 3 over the weekend, losing that first one to Army, kind of deflating. Then you smack Navy around, and you get a hard-fought win over Air Force. And now you're sitting on the season 6-2. You've got Queens coming up in the midweek. And then your first true test. No offense to any of these other teams on the schedule, but the first time you get to kind of measure yourself up early in the season against a quality opponent, you get, obviously, the Clemson series. Founders Friday, Segra Saturday, Upstate Sunday. I believe off the top of my head is how we're doing it. And by the way, we'll be, like we do when the games are at Segra, we'll be kind of doing our little tailgate show, 1 to 2:30, Tyler and Elijah at Segra this Saturday. So we got that going on. We've been doing that now. This is we did that. Tommy and I did my first year here. Elijah and Tyler did it 2 years ago. Last year, I don't believe it. Was it Segra on top of my head? But then this year, we're going to be back, and we'll be doing our little tailgate show 1 to 2:30 with Tyler and Elijah here on 107.5 The Game in Columbia. But one of the interesting things that came out of the weekend, and probably the biggest thing, was watching the freshman Will Craddock. 5 hits in the series, 2 home runs from the leadoff spot. Just a really nice 3 days for the freshman. And, you get that Ethan Petrie feel to Will Craddock. We'll see where it goes, because Petrie was ridiculous his freshman year and his sophomore year, for that matter. So, you get that little vibe. They're both bigger dudes. Do a lot of damage when they barrel the baseball. And we'll see where Craddock goes from here. But this past weekend was nice. It was a nice taste. We'll see how the rest of his freshman season plays itself out. But it was really cool to watch over the weekend. Also, Talmadge Lecroy, 6 hits over the weekend. And look, Talmadge Lecroy, a guy that's getting kind of given up on by the fan base, and really people who cover the team. It's like, good guy, loyal to the program, excellent Gamecock and how he represents, but a guy that offensively has really struggled the last couple years, had some real issues in the infield 2 years ago, got moved to catcher last year, got hurt. Kind of goes out of your thought process. And then back this year, Coach Maneri pretty much from the get-go said Lecroy's the catcher. And so far, again, it's early, but Talmadge Lecroy's really done some damage at the plate. Even hit for some power. So he's been a good story so far this year. Alex Valentin took the ball last night, shut the door of those final 3 innings. That was an excellent appearance. Starting pitching, a little, up and down over the weekend. But Amp Phillips was really good Saturday. So right now, the team's sitting at 6-2, and look, I get it. I do. I understand. Right now, when this team loses a game, and it's not to a Clemson or a North Carolina or an SEC team, the fallback is, oh, geez, I told you they were going to stink. And right now, sitting at 6-2, losing a game to Northern Kentucky and losing a game to Army. Army, by the way, was swept by Clemson. So again, that feeling is, oh, jeez. And that was the feeling Friday after the loss to Army. But then, to South Carolina's credit, they bounced back and they beat Navy, and then they take out Air Force. They do win 2 out of 3 over the weekend. But again, to folks who are looking at gloom and doom, which, I understand where you're coming from after last year, you were like, still, you lost a game to Army. Please. Because that's just the way, when you go through a bad stretch as a fan with a team, and they come back the next year, and you're not really bought in 100%, you want to be, you want them to give you reason to be, you're just not yet there. Anything that can trip you back will trip you back. You lose to Northern Kentucky, say, they can't beat Northern Kentucky. Holy bleep, 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 bleep. Then you win a few games after that. And then you lose to Army. And it's like, see, you can't even beat Army. Despite the fact Army's been a solid baseball program. Fans don't want to hear that. Because, again, that is not an SEC school. It's not a top 25 type program perennially. It's a good mid-major in the Patriot League, who has won that league, has gotten to the college baseball playoffs numerous times, 6 out of the last 7 years or something. But, if you're an SEC team in the mind of a fan base, you should beat Army. Forget it's just one game. Anything can happen in one game in baseball. When you're not bought in all the way yet, you go, Army. Now, South Carolina was coming off a heck of a year, and you would stumble against an Army, or Northern Kentucky, early for that matter. You just say, you know what, it's early. We'll get it right when it matters. Because that's the mindset if you come off a successful season. But when you don't, you're not ready to be bought in, even though you want to be, even though you want to be positive, you want to, be glass half full, glass running over the top onto the table guy or girl. You're just not ready to be bought in yet because last year was so bad. So I get you. I do. And we'll see where it all plays out this week with Queens. And then that, like I said, that early season test against Clemson. Last year you get swept. Obviously, you hope for a better result this year. So we'll talk about that with Coach Maneri, bottom of the hour. A bunch of different things to get in with Paul. So that's coming up at 3:30. Besides the baseball piece, we'll talk more about men's and women's basketball. The men get you needed that one, man. You've had a long losing streak. You get to taste a win. Makes you feel good. Offensively, you were excellent for most of the basketball game. Defensively, you frustrated Josh Hubbard, Mississippi State's number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, and number 5 options on offense. You made Hubbard's life difficult to get shots off. And Hubbard likes to shoot, so he's going to shoot it no matter what. I got 4 guys are on me. I can make this. I mean, that's just Josh Hubbard's mentality. And game before, he was on fire against Auburn and scored, 46? But the Gamecocks frustrated him, chased him around, got in his grill, and Hubbard was off all day. So, really good game on offense regarding putting the ball in the basket, getting to the line, and defensively, nice work frustrating Mississippi State's number 1 scorer in Josh Hubbard. So that was great. And we'll get more into that as the show goes along. What does it mean for the season? Can I be honest? Nothing. You still only won 3 games in the league. I mean, you got another couple weeks to go here. A few weeks to go till the end. But unless something drastically changes, you're like, okay, Mississippi State stunk, but you beat them at home. Good. There's no bad loss at this point, or ever, pretty much. But, okay, you got that win. Now you've won by 1 more games in conference than you did last year. Okay. Is that a big deal? No, not really. But it was a nice W. And moving forward, if you could find a way to stack some more wins, you got Kentucky tomorrow night. You can hear that right here on 107.5 The Game in Columbia and our affiliate in Myrtle Beach. They go, wow, how about you? But Kentucky is in a really weird spot. This is not the Kentucky they were last year. I mean, they're solid on both ends of the court, but they're not as good on offense as they were last year. They lack consistency in the point guard position. They're not moving the ball to get easy buckets like last year. So they're not as good. But they're still on paper better than South Carolina, but we'll see how that goes. That'll be tomorrow. But if you can find a way to stack some wins together between now and the end of the year, people feel better about the basketball program for the men, and who knows what that means about the future of Lamont Paris. Because, look, Lamont's on the hottest of seats. He'd even probably tell you that if you pop in some of that Falker Truth Serum. Or you put him in the movie Liar, Liar. So Lamont knows how important this stretch is for his job employment. Now, South Carolina is going to be favored in no game the rest of the year. That was it. The Mississippi State game was the last one. That was it. They will not be favored again the rest of the season. And we'll see how that plays itself out. I think there's a winnable game. I know it's on the road in Oxford, but Ole Miss they've been bad. On both sides of the court, too, which is weird because Chris Beard's a hell of a defensive coach, but Ole Miss isn't playing D. They're not consistent on offense. They've been on both ends of the court all year. So maybe you can go to Oxford and Ole Miss will really be and maybe you can find a way to win there, but you won't be favored on the road against Ole Miss. You're not going to be favored in any game the rest of the year. All the analytics sites will be predicting you to lose the rest of your games. So we'll see how the season plays itself out from here. But obviously the job security of Lamont Paris it's a legit question at this point. And like I've said before, there's a lot going on there. All right, it's a post-game show. Terry Ford, Coach Maneri coming up at 3:30. We'll come back talk some women's basketball next here on the Game and the Game Network. Post-game show. Coach Maneri coming up bottom of the hour. We'll talk some baseball with the USC baseball coach here on the post-game show. Like I said, that's bottom of the hour with Coach. We talked some men's basketball in the last segment. So we got to get to the women before we move on back to baseball. The women just kind of took Ole Miss apart on Sunday at CLA. Packed house. Good times with a win like that. Joyce Edwards, nice game. Bettina Ocott knocking down threes. I mean, it was a good night. A really good night. And once again, South Carolina clinching at least a share of the SEC championship regular season. Here is Dawn Staley, Cut 7 postgame, talking about the significance of another SEC championship.
I don't know why people say that, and I think it is.
Okay, that wasn't it. Let's do this again. Make sure we got this right. Interesting. Okay. I don't know what to tell you. I got to find where we're at here. Here we go. Here we go. That's on the right spot. Now we'll get Dawn Staley talking about the significance of winning an SEC championship.
I think it means a little bit more because this league is so hard. And just the competitive nature of it, to have 2 games remaining, and you're going to share at least part of a championship, a regular season championship in this climate. I'm just super proud of our players for just being able to compete and win at the highest level in this league.
Yeah, look, I think it was said over the weekend that this, again, South Carolina is a standard in the SEC. Have there been some teams to, try to climb the mountain and push them off, so to speak, like Lion King? Sure. Or Black Panther? Yeah. But at the end of the day, one team keeps staying atop the mountain. 10 times Dawn Staley has at least a share of the SEC championship. I think the only other coach to have double-digit regular season championships, whether outright or share, was Pat Summitt. That, I believe I heard that over the weekend. Also, Dawn was asked, was this her staff's best coaching job since she's been at South Carolina?
I don't know if it's our best. That's for you all to judge. I think we do what we need to do with who we have. I think our approach has been the same. I don't think we change who we are according to who we have healthy. We don't ever do that. We just figure out a way. I do think we have a coaching staff that we work at it. Like, we agree to disagree agreeably a lot, right? I think we do a great job just daily. So when there's a time in which we have to blow our top, our kids know it ain't coming from a place of love. It's always coming from a place of love and growing and understanding. And the kitchen's hot. Kitchen's hot. We play in the type of league that we play in, and sometimes you gotta walk through it, right? Sometimes to get to the thermostat, to turn it down, so you gotta walk through it. So I think we've done a really good job with, and I probably say this with all of our teams, is taking the time with our players when they need it. Them just coming up and saying, thanks for talking to me. I mean, they don't have to say that, but when they do say it, you've helped them. You've either, pushed them through a moment in which could have gone downhill, to a moment of where you restored their confidence. And that's the cycle that we go through every single year, and they don't have to listen. So I'm happy that we got a group that listens, that they have a desire to be great at what they do. you could have that and not listen, and it takes a little bit longer to get there. We got ones that they got great buy-in.
I mean, that's what I think is interesting. We can talk about wins and losses and championships and cutting down banners and cutting down nets and hanging banners and all that cool stuff. Whenever you hear Dawn talk about her team, she talks about the relationships, right? The connection. And I still think in the world we live in now, that's important. In some ways, it's even more important because these players can go anywhere they want. They can transfer, hit the portal, see you bye. There is no keeping them in your program if they don't want to be there. So I think if you're a coach that communicates with your players and you truly are there to make them better people, not just better players, and listen to them and be there for them, that matters a ton. Yes, they want to get better. Yeah, they want to go take the next step in their careers professionally in whatever sport they play. Sure, they do. They want to win games. They want to win titles. All that stuff, yeah, but they also want you to actually, give a crap about them. And I think that the coaches that do the best in communicating and being there and showing that they're looking out for the player in their best interest totally, I think are the ones that are going to do better in this environment that we're in now. We'll get more from Dawn and talk more about what happened with the women over the weekend or yesterday at CLA. All right, we'll move forward, though. Paul Maneri, South Carolina baseball coach. We'll get Paul's thoughts on the weekend and moving forward next here on the postgame show. Terry Ford, appreciate you hanging here on the game. All right, speaking of Gamecock baseball, we have Coach Paul Maneri here in just a minute. We have our Crescent Construction Grand Slam contest back again this year. If a Gamecock hitter goes yard with the bases loaded, you could win cash. Pot goes up $25 every game. You go to 1075thegame.com to register. Now, Coach, you cannot register for this contest.
Okay. Hopefully we'll make somebody a winner out there this year.
Pot is up to $200 right now, and again, you can go to 1075thegame.com to register. You know, Coach, a successful weekend. You win 2 out of 3. I want to ask you something, though. When you're sitting there in the dugout before the game and you see those kids from Air Force warming up and you're looking at those unis, do you take a minute and kind of go back in the old memory banks and think about your time when you were at the academy?
Be quite honest with you, I do. It was a very special time in my personal life to have the opportunity to be the first civilian baseball coach at the United States Air Force Academy. And I had so many wonderful young men. It was really amazing. Yesterday, right before the game, somebody came up to my dugout. It was a former player of mine that I remembered very vividly hitting a 3-run home run against BYU in the 9th inning to win the game 15-14 for us. And, of course, when I look across at the dugout, Mike Kozlowski was a sophomore, junior, and senior in my first 3 years out there, and he's like a son to me, and he's done a tremendous job coaching the team after serving as a C-17 pilot in the Air Force. So, you know, all those young men over there, they're the custodians of our way of life, and I respect them so greatly, and truthfully don't really like playing against Air Force because I root for them all the time, except, of course, the game that we play against them. But I thought the weekend went really great overall. I wish we'd have won one more game, of course, played better against Army. But, you know, I think it meant a lot to all the cadets and midshipmen. I think it meant a lot to our fans. I know it meant a lot to our own players. And it was a special weekend.
You speak of the weekend, and one of the positives, we're talking to Coach Paul Maneri, head coach, of course, South Carolina Gamecocks here on the postgame show. Will Craddock had himself a weekend. Your freshman was just named SEC Freshman of the Week. Let him off a couple of games, hit you a couple homers, 5 hits overall the weekend. And typically, and you know, you've coached many years, and some freshmen are more ready than others. And talk about when you realized how at what point that Will Craddock could be ready. I know it's early and there's a long way to go for him. There'll be ups and downs. But when did you think he was going to be a guy maybe could be more ready than others as a freshman?
I'll tell you why. First of all, his physicality. You know, he's a extremely strong young man. He's, you know, in excess of 230 pounds or almost 230 pounds, I think. And he's really built his strength. And, man, when he hits them a long way. So obviously the physical part of it. But, you know, look, I've seen a lot of freshmen that look the part but can't really play the part yet. Will has an uncanny ability to have composure and poise, self-confidence. He's not boisterous and he's not flashy, you know, in the sense of bring the attention to me. He's very humble. But he's not afraid out there, and he competes really hard, and he plays the whole game. I just met with him a few minutes ago, and I said, look, I love the way you hit, Will, and that's obviously a big part of your success, but, you know, making plays on defense and running the bases well and just being such a good teammate, all those things add into it to make him a really special player and a special person. And I think he's going to have a great career here at South Carolina. I think he's going to go on from here and have a great career in professional baseball.
Coach Paul Maneri hanging out with us, talking Gamecock baseball here on the postgame show on the Game Network. Coach, you know, you look early this year so far. You've had a ton of lineup combinations, tweaking and moving guys here and there in the lineup. And just kind of open up your head for us and kind of give us your thought process as you tinker with a lineup early in the year. Is this something you like to do in general? Have you had years where you just knew your set lineup and you moved forward just knowing this was what it's going to be because the club was set so much? Kind of give us your thought process as you go through setting up lineups early this year.
Well, this is a time to experiment and see what guys can do. One thing about college baseball is we don't have exhibition games before the season. We got to have a couple in the fall, but the springtime is a lot different than the fall. And you have to play the games. I mean, some guys can look great in practice, maybe even look great in scrimmage games, but then when the bell rings, they're not quite the player they were in the practice games when there's all of a sudden the lights are turned on, there's people in the stands, and the games really count. And the vice versa happens. Some kids don't show that great in the inter-squad games, but then when the bright lights go on, they take their game to another level. So, look, I like to give everybody an opportunity and kind of, play their way into it or play their way out of it. So during these first couple of weeks, certainly try a lot of different combinations and a lot of different things, and we'll still continue to do that. But we do have a big series coming up this weekend that is just like an SEC series, when you play Clemson. So you want to try to put your best team out there for sure in those games, and hopefully we'll find the right solution to be able to have success this weekend.
You brought up an interesting thing about having exhibition games leading up to the season. Shane Beamer has been very vocal. He'd love to have a preseason game in college football before season started. Would you be a guy to have a few exhibition games before you start for real? Would that be something you'd like, or you're old school and say this is the way we do it, and it's okay with me?
No, I would love to have a couple of games against somebody else. Opening day, I'm telling you, I've coached in World Series games, national championship games, conference tournament championship games. I'm never more nervous than I am on opening day of the season, just because it's the unknown. You just haven't seen your guys out there against another team, and you're not really sure, 100% sure what you have until you start competing against other teams. And then as you go through the season, nothing's perfect, of course, but there's ups and there's downs, and some guys perform, some guys struggle, and some guys get injured. All those kind of things take place until eventually you come to the right combination of guys. And one of the things that I've, last year notwithstanding, one of the things I've usually taken pride in is that our team gets better as the year goes on. And I think it's because I give guys a lot of guys a chance to prove themselves and show what they can do. And when they get their opportunity, they take advantage of it and make us a stronger team going forward.
Paul Mainieri, head coach, Carolina Baseball, with us here on the Postgame Show on the Game Network. Alex Valentin, 3 scoreless for you to shut the door on Air Force. Only gave up a hit, struck out 3. Kind of talk about that appearance for Valentin and what you see for him right now as a role in the pen.
Well, Alex has been great. He's pitched in 3 games for us. I'm not sure without his performance in all 3 of those games if we win them. So he's got 2 saves, and his other outing was really solid. So Alex is a very good pitcher. He transferred from Texas State, and he's a strong personality. When you watch him on the mound, you can see he's very confident. He's really fearless, and he goes after the hitters. He's just not afraid of anybody. And he's got talent, too. His left-handed fastball up to 94 miles an hour plays big, but he's also got a really good changeup and a really good slider. So he didn't need to use his changeup as much last night. He was pretty much overpowering them, especially into the conditions with the strong wind blowing. But he'll continue to be something huge for us. I mean, listen, I could start him. I could use him as a long reliever. I could use him as a closer. He's kind of like the Swiss Army knife, and I think he'd be successful in any role. But right now I'm going to keep him in the bullpen, and I think that's where he can affect the most games.
Last thing for you, Coach. Riley Goodman, first start, did have some base runners, but wiggled through the trouble, showed the arm talent, didn't give up any runs in 3+ innings, 3+ innings against Army. Had some base runners this time, couldn't wiggle out of it, gave up 3 earned runs. Is this just, hey, he's coming back from Tommy John, and there's going to be some highs and lows? Did you see some stuff that you got to really get corrected with Riley? What went on with Goodman after 2 starts to you?
You got to remember Riley had never pitched in a college baseball game until his first start 2 weeks ago. So he's a very talented kid. There's no question about it. Like you mentioned, his arm talent, throws 96, got a good slider, good changeup. But there's going to be some rough times as he's growing into college baseball. He hurt his arm when he was in high school, had Tommy John surgery, spent all year last year rehabbing. And, because we had 2 guys go down early for us, Philpott and McCoy, Riley probably jumped from third or fourth starter to the Friday night starter without any college experience. We thought that was the right thing to do, but we probably pushed him a little too quickly. So I think he's going to settle in, and he's going to do fine. I think the kid's got a lot of talent, and I think he's going to keep developing and getting better. But there are going to be bumps along the way.
All right, I lied. I got 2 minutes. I want to ask you one more quick question while I got you. Okay, here you are, year 2 at South Carolina, about 8 games in at this point. Last year you had come out of retirement. Your first couple weeks, you're 8 games in. What's the feeling now, an extra year in from being away than it was at this time last year?
Well, last year I think we were undefeated at this time, and this year we've lost 2 games, and yet I feel much better about this team than I did last year's team. We had a couple of days where we didn't swing the bats well, and obviously the first game against Army, Riley struggled at the beginning, and we got into a hole. But I think this team's going to continue to get better and better. And the biggest reason for my optimism is I do think we have some pitching depth. Our bullpen has been terrific all year, and at least in these first 8 games, except for the one game against Army, when Josh Gunther struggled coming out of the bullpen. But outside of that, our bullpen's been really great, and we're going to get Philpott, and we're going to get Horowitz back, which is only going to strengthen our staff. And if we can get this rotation figured out, I think we got a chance to be pretty competitive on the mound. And I know that we'll hit better as the season goes on. These kids have hit everywhere they've been, the ones that have transferred in. And I just think our hitting will become more consistent. Talmadge LaCroix is playing like on a different planet right now. KJ Scobie's doing some great things. And then, the emergence of Will Craddock, I think, is going to make a big difference as we keep going forward. So even though we've lost a couple that we probably should have won or could have won, I feel really good about our team as we go forward. But obviously this coming weekend, a lot's going to be made out of this big test that we'll have with the Clemson team. And, it's going to be a lot of fun. I think our kids are going to compete really hard.
Coach Paul Mainieri, we appreciate you. We'll bug you again next Monday, Coach.
All right, sounds good,
All
sir.
right, thank you. At South Carolina head baseball coach Paul Mainieri. We'll pop back in. Post-game show. Time to open the vault here on The Game. Time to crack open the vault here on the postgame show. All right, some Olympic stuff in here. First of all, this day in 1960, Carol Heiss captured the first gold medal for the United States in the Winter Olympics at Squaw Valley, winning the figure skating women's gold medal. How about Lissa Liu winning the women's gold medal this year? No one saw that coming. None of the experts. I know you'll find this shocking. I'm not an ice skating expert. I'm not. I know. But no one saw that coming. So that was a phenomenal moment for the United States. Also, this day in 1980, Eric Heiden. I remember this. Whew. Eric Heiden wins his 5th medal and shatters the world record by 6 seconds in the 10,000-meter speed skate at the Winter Olympics in Lake Placid. 5 gold medals for Eric Heiden that year at the Winter Olympics in Lake Placid. On this day in 1985, Indiana and Purdue were playing a college basketball game. Bobby Knight was the head coach at Indiana. Bobby Knight was not happy. And Bobby Knight did this.
Steve Reed, an excellent free throw shooter, will have the honors shooting the technicals.
Looky here. Bobby Knight just threw his chair clear across the free throw lane.
And I think Fred
Unbelievable. He picked up another tee. And now Fred Jaspers is called for athletic director Ralph Floyd.
Fred Jaspers talking to Mr. Floyd down in the corner.
Now we got Ralph Floyd out on the floor.
It's 11-6. We're just 5 minutes into the contest, and this has erupted.
Yeah, Bobby Knight went nuts. Threw a chair. Obviously getting ejected. And it was a thing, man. That was a thing. Steve Reed of Purdue was at the line getting ready to shoot free throws, the technical free throws, and Knight just grabbed the chair and just skidded it right across the lane. And obviously that was technical number 2, and see ya. And look, Bobby Knight, I mean, that thing, that was funny. We all joked about it. To this day, you know, people will still joke about Bobby Knight throwing a chair. And I remember reading the book Season on the Brink about Bobby Knight in the Indiana basketball program. Phenomenal book by John Feinstein. And in the book, Knight, after the chair throwing thing, this was a couple years later when the book was being written about the 86 team that lost to Cleveland State, I believe in the Sweet 16, or the round of 32. Mouse McFadden of Cleveland State and Kevin Rooney was the head coach. I can't remember. But anyway, I digress. So this is the year that Indiana lost to Cleveland State. So Bobby Knight is going to go cut a TV commercial that season. And he goes to the TV station, and this young guy thinks he's really funny, brings over a chair for Bobby Knight, because Bobby Knight's already sitting down. He brings over a chair. He goes, here, you can throw this in the commercial if you want to, coach. And the kid's laughing, thinking he's funny, and Knight's just looking at him stone-faced. And the kid stops laughing and just kind of slinks away. But he thought it was funny. And it might have been funny, but not to Bobby Knight. And that was this day in 1985. This day in 2002, the Americans won a silver and a bronze medal, both in the 4-man bobsled in Salt Lake City. It was the first time in almost 50 years that the U.S. had won a medal in bobsledding. This day in 2002. This day in 2007, this is just ridiculous. Tiger Woods' winning streak on the PGA Tour, which began in July, comes to an end as Woods fails to notice a ball mark in the line of his 4-foot birdie putt that would have won his third-round match against Nick O'Hearn. Woods missed. He would lose in 20 holes. And O'Hearn would win the Accenture Match Play Championship. Woods hadn't lost a match since July. He had not lost a tournament on the PGA Tour. The Tiger years were sick. Tiger at his prime was just it was something, man. It just was. And to experience it as a sports nerd and watch this guy, I mean, when he was on his total heater, he was winning one of every 3 matches on tour. One of every 3 tournaments on tour. Think about that for a minute. That's how dominant Tiger Woods was during the height of Tiger's powers. He won golf tournaments by merely showing up and walking to the tee box. Dudes would soil themselves in fear. It was unreal to watch. It's like we'll talk about the 1980 Miracle on Ice later on the show in regard to what happened yesterday in Italy when the U.S. won the gold medal for the first time since 1980. But just, if you, because, the height of Tiger's powers now are, we're seeing, it's been 20 years. Some folks were really little when Tiger was tearing it up. And some people weren't born when Tiger was tearing it up. And if you weren't of the age to watch it and experience it, look, I get the PGAs looking for their next Tiger Woods all the time. I know Scotty Scheffler's done some Tiger-like things in his time. But the Woods thing was a phenomenon, man. It just was. It was something. Absolutely something. All right, there's the vault. We'll pop back in here. We will discuss the Olympics a bit. To start off the 4 o'clock hour, what happened yesterday with American hockey. Thrilling. Just a fantastic gold medal game with Canada. We'll get into that coming up. Also circle back to the happenings of the weekend, Gamecocks baseball and basketball. It's coming up on the post-game show on the game.
Launch up behind the net. And it's Werenski. Now Jack Hughes puts it around McCarr. United States with numbers. Black across it comes. Jack Hughes wins it. The golden goal for the United States. For the first time since the 1980 miracle, the United States takes the gold. Jack Hughes beating Jordan Bennington.
That was something yesterday. I hope you saw it. Whether you saw it live in the morning, I mean, you can see the replay on Peacock later if you wanted to, but the Peacock replay's still there. It's probably going to sit there for a while because they have a huge section of Olympic content. But, man, that was something. That was something. Just a tense game from the get-go. You had best on best in the world, and the U.S. finds a way. Hey, look, sometimes the sports gods just line up for you. And the U.S., don't get me wrong, the U.S. is they are a fantastically talented squad. This is not the Miracle on Ice in 1980. Make no mistake, the U.S. is really good. The U.S. and Canada are the two best teams in the world. And they fought like it. And, look, we'll get to the Jack Hughes goal in a minute. And the Matt Boldy goal, by the way, was unbelievable, and it's going to get lost in the shuffle. We're going to get to that, too. But Connor Hellenbuck. Hellenbuck was there's that old saying, if you're into hockey, the goalie stood on his head. And that's what Hellenbuck did. 42 shots, stopped 41. And some of those shots were point blank, a couple of breakaways. By the way, the breakaways weren't done by slappies. A dude named Connor McDavid had one, and Connor McDavid is looked at as the most talented player in the world in, the last 10 years. Then you get a guy named Macklin Celebrini, who is, 12 years old, and is one of the best offensive players in the world. Both had breakaways on Hellenbuck and couldn't convert. And the save of the tournament on Devin Toews was the paddle save. That was the game. That was the game. And Toews had a wide open net, flicks the shot, and then Hellenbuck gets the stick on it, the paddle, and knocks it away. It was point blank. Also, there was other opportunities for Canada, and they couldn't get it done. And just sometimes, look, if you're not into hockey, sometimes the goalie just makes a difference. The other team could be better, but if your goalie is better than they are, nothing else matters. And that's what happened yesterday. Hellenbuck was just the best player on the ice for either team. And that was the difference. The goalie in hockey can make a difference, especially in a one-game winner-take-all. The goalie can make a difference, and he did. I mean, Nathan McKinnon had a shot at the open net and whiffed for Canada. Canadians had their opportunities in the second and third period and couldn't cash in. The U.S. had opportunities in the first period. Austin Matthews, one of the best goal scorers in the world, has a shot on the porch and decides to pass instead of take the shot, which is something he typically wouldn't have done in that situation, but he just decided to pass instead of take the shot. I'm not saying he would have scored, but still, he had an opening and decided, I'm going to flick a pass to center ice. So, look, both teams had opportunities. Canada had a lot more opportunities they couldn't cash in on. But Connor Hellenbuck was magnificent in goal for the United States. He just was. Jim Craig in 1980, from when Michael Ruzioni scored the go-ahead goal, there was still 8, 10, 12 minutes left in that game. I was a little kid, my memory. And Jim Craig, it felt like, had to make 100 saves in that span of time from the Ruzioni goal until the scoreboard went all zeros. But for 3 periods, what Hellenbuck did, an American goalie, to win a gold medal, you're never going to see a performance better. It was unreal. And look, the Matt Boldy goal, let's get to this really quick. The Matt Boldy goal, that was magician-type stuff, man. I mean, he's coming down the ice. You got 2 Canadian defenders, 2 of the best defenders in the world, by the way, converging on you, going after the puck. And so Boldy flicks the puck in the air to get it ahead of the 2 defenders, and then he outskates them to the puck. It's like in basketball, dribbling the ball between a defender's legs, grabbing it and going up for a layup. It was almost something like that because, again, if you don't flick that puck up and put it airborne to get it ahead of the defenders, you're not getting to the goal. And then Boldy, with the defenders on his tail, goes short side on Bennington, the Canadian goalie. That goal, it gets lost in the shuffle because of how good Hellenbuck was between the pipes for America, and then the game winner, the golden goal by Hughes in overtime. But Boldy's goal was a thing of beauty. Whew. That thing was something else. And then, of course, you get the 3-on-3 in overtime. Now, I'm going to say this. I don't win or lose, I love that 3-on-3. Especially when you got the best players in the world skating at 100 miles an hour, it feels like, up and down the ice with all that space to maneuver. To me, that's fun. That's fun to watch. And, on that play, I mean, Jack, the other thing about that play, the game-winning goal, Canada had the puck, and they were in control of the puck, and Hughes knocks it away from, I think it was Connor McDavid, I can't remember for sure, knocks it away from a Canadian, and that starts the rush the other way. And then Zach Rowinski gets the puck on the right, and he kind of turns and has the presence of mind to just pause a second, and then Hughes, who was on the right, then stops and goes to the open ice on the left to get himself open. Rowinski hits him. Hughes goes 5-hole between Bennington's legs, and all hell breaks loose. That was something else, man. It was just, that was good stuff. That was good stuff. And, again, the United States breaks this 46-year spell since the 1980 Miracle on Ice. And, look, Canada's better on paper. They are. And you could say Canada controlled that game more than the United States, and you're right. But all the saucy Canadians who are upset, look, I get it. It's what you say when you lose, but you control the action. You say, hey, we were better. Yeah, well, the one place you weren't better was on the scoreboard, and that's what counts. You should be salty with yourself. You had chance after chance after chance, and you just got beat by the goalie in most cases. And sometimes you had the chance, you just whiffed or you missed. And the U.S. had won the double doink. Was it the end of the second period? The double doink off the crossbars. The Americans held on, and they held on. Look, they penalty killed a 5-on-3, for the love of God, against some of the best offensive talent in the world with the Canadians. It was fun, man. It was fun. That was something else. Watching the best players in the world flying up and down the ice with the speed and skill that both teams had, and then watching a goalie just stone guys like Nathan McKinnon and Connor McDavid, Macklin Celebrini, and all that talent that Canada had. That was a thing, man. That was a thing of beauty to watch. And, breaking that drought, that 46 years since a Miracle on Ice, and with where the U.S. is when it comes to hockey and where they've gotten now, that they are right, it's a rivalry now. The U.S. finally got over on Canada. It can't be a rivalry if they always beat you in the big games. Finally, it is because you got them. You got them in the Olympics. And by the way, I have never seen a crew of people so allergic to silver in my entire life than the Canadians when they were getting their medals. every one of those dudes had bitter beer face. I get it. You're mad. You're upset. You feel like you let one get away. Whatever. You're not happy. A lot of those guys will take that silver medal and throw it in a drawer and never look at it again because they're so mad. I get it. I do. Watching the ceremony post-game was fantastic. And I'll tell you, the whole Johnny Gaudreau part of this thing, when was it Brady Tkachuk or Matthew Tkachuk? They're skating with Gaudreau's jersey, I think, along with Larkin, the defenseman, and they're skating with the jersey. And I'm like, man, that's a really nice touch. Not forgetting Gaudreau, because Gaudreau, if you don't know, Johnny Gaudreau was riding a motorcycle, him and his brother, and he got hit by a drunk driver, South Jersey, and both Johnny and his brother were killed. And Gaudreau was a good player and played with some of these guys who now are on the Olympic hockey team. And there are a lot of people who think that Gaudreau, if he was alive, had a really good chance to make the Olympic hockey team. And so for America to honor him by carrying the jersey around was a really nice touch. But I'm not going to lie to you, man. When they brought those kids on the ice to get the team picture, that was special. That was very cool. It was funny. I was talking to Elijah and Preston about this morning, and I'm like, man, how could they do that to me? Make me get those feels going. And Preston was like, yeah, it's like the Grinch when all of a sudden his heart. I said, yeah. Like I had a Grinch heart all of a sudden. And I was like, man, that's just special. Taking those two little kids out on the ice and getting that picture with the team. And seeing Gaudreau's wife and his parents, and just, man, that was a nice touch. It really was. It was good stuff. That was cool yesterday. It really was. In America, most gold medals that the Americans have ever won at the Winter Olympics. We talked about Lake Placid. Eric Heiden wins 5 gold. The U.S. wins the gold in hockey. And you would figure maybe that's the year this year was the year they won the most gold medals as an Olympic team. And that was in Italy. And I think the most total medals they've ever won. And they finished second to Norway, who won the most medals they ever won. But yeah, that hockey game was something special. It really was yesterday. And look, if the U.S. would have lost, I'd have said that was a great game. Sucks that the U.S. had to lose. But it was a great game, and then you get the cherry on top that the Americans got to stand there and hear the anthem, which I will not lie. I'm an Olympic dork. I love that stuff. And watching these people stand there and, have that medal and hearing the anthem, I'm a goober, man. I love that stuff. I'm not going to lie to you. I think it's fantastic. And we'll talk more about the whole thing in the 5 o'clock news, kind of maybe some other angles on the win over the Canadians yesterday, and also just the Olympics in general. We'll get to that in 5 o'clock news. All right, so we will circle back, take a look at what happened this weekend. Men's basketball, Lamont Paris, his thoughts on a nice W over Mississippi State at CLA on Saturday. That's coming up next. We'll hear Lamont just talk about, I don't know, it feels good to win. We'll get into that next here on the Postgame Show. Terry Ford, appreciate you hanging out as we go till 6 on the Game and the Game Network and at the Game TV Radio on YouTube. Dr. Dan in the Men's Clinic of South Carolina, we talk about those folks all the time. And because, look, again, guys, life changes, things happen. You're not as this as you used to be or that as you used to be. You can't remember things. You can't lift as much at the gym. You're really, really sore and can't bounce back, and you're dragging after exercise. Maybe you don't have any more or don't have the life drive or sex drive or professional drive or whatever drive you used to have. Maybe you can't sleep as good as you used to. And you're like losing your mind, and it's frustrating you. It could be low testosterone or something easily looked at by the Men's Clinic of South Carolina. So call 803-875-MENS. Go in for the free consultation. Tell them what's going on. They'll do a low testosterone test. It is low T. They'll put you on a program specifically designed for you to get you back to being you again. It's the Men's Clinic of South Carolina. Post-game show. Terry Ford, appreciate you hanging out with us as we cook this sucker till 6 here on The Game and The Game Network. And at The Game TV Radio, our little YouTube get-together where you can see my stylish black and white shirt. I made it myself. I just sew one over the weekend at time. Then I made a quilt. I made a shawl. Anybody under the age of 70 wear a shawl? Just wondering. All right, obviously Jay's not with us today, but good news. Things have gone well for our bud, Jay Phillips. He's scheduled to go home today. So, again, another baby step in the process. Surgery went successful. recovery, short term there in the hospital. Everything was going in the right direction. And now Jay will go home, scheduled to go home today, and then he starts more recovery at home. We're hoping here in the next couple of weeks we'll have Jay back. So things so far, thumbs up for Jay Phillips. And once again, like always, thanks a lot for all of your thoughts and prayers and well wishes toward our good bud Jay Phillips. So we do appreciate that very much. All right, men's basketball over the weekend. A victory over Mississippi State. South Carolina almost scored a hundy in that game. First of all, South Carolina played well on offense. Let's not take anything away from what the Gamecocks did on the offensive end of the court, because they were efficient. They made shots. They moved the ball. They moved without the ball. You know, there was the extra pass being made. South Carolina shot 55% from the floor against Mississippi State, 50% from three. Had 20 assists on 31 made hoops. Almost 70% of their shots were assisted. Only 6 turnovers. I mean, it was a really good showing by South Carolina against Mississippi State on the offensive end of the court. And defensively, I thought Josh Hubbard went 4 for 20. Hubbard was coming off a game against Auburn. He was on a massive heater and scored 46. Hubbard was frustrated this whole basketball game. Only 2 of 12 from 3. Just scored 13 points. 13 points on 20 shots, by the way. That is the dictionary definition of inefficient ball chucking. But that's what Hubbard does. And when Hubbard's on, like he was against Auburn, he's phenomenal. And when he's off, he's like he was against South Carolina, he's ugh. So South Carolina did a good job frustrating Hubbard. And Hubbard will just, at some point, Hubbard feels like he has to shoot the rock. Couple reasons. A, he probably doesn't have a whole lot of faith in his teammates. And B, he just has a called I need to shoot the ball disease. So those things combined, Hubbard he'll throw it up there. And he makes enough of these shots. No, good shot. He makes enough of those to where he takes too many of those. But he does make some, to be fair. But he had a rough offensive day against South Carolina. Part of that was just Josh Hubbard, his game in general. But two, South Carolina did a really nice job frustrating Hubbard and getting in his grill and making his life difficult as much as you can. And Hubbard had one of those days he can have sometimes as well where he just really struggled. But here's Lamont Paris. Let's get to this. Lamont, post-game, just saying, man, it's good to win.
I'd be lying if I didn't say it felt good to be on the other side of the win and loss situation. So I'm really happy for our guys. They played well. We've been playing better. I've been saying this in these last couple of games. You're on the road at the top 2 teams in standings, and I thought we did some really good things in those games. At Alabama, at Florida, I think was one of our best defensive halves in terms of our first shot defense. So we've been doing some things well, and then for it all to come together on a day that you also shot the ball well, I thought that was it was really good for the guys just to enjoy that feeling, and you know, the rest of the season is the shortest part of the season, but it's the most important part of the season for us. So we'll approach every game like that, and try to build on some of the things that have been brewing for a little bit. This is the first one that has culminated in a win in a little while, and so, but continuing to build on some of the things that we've really been working on.
South Carolina, before the W Saturday against Mississippi State, had lost 7 in a row, and I believe 9 of 10. Or 10 of 11 until the only win in that stretch, it was 10 of 11, was Oklahoma at CLA. So it's been a long, rough road. Obviously, when you're 3-11 in league and 12-15 overall, you've had a big rough patch. Speaking of a long time between wins, here's Coach Paris kind of discussing that scenario? It's been a minute since you've posted a W.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. It sounds so different when you say 32 days. I wasn't counting, but it does sound different when you say 32 days. But, there's challenges. And so I try to, my own personal anything always comes so far down the list as it is. And so when I know that I have any challenges, I know that the guys have perceived to have more difficult challenges and probably are less equipped to handle those challenges. But honestly, for me personally, one of my strengths is that, I always say by the next morning, like sometimes, a couple times I don't sleep the way I should and whatever, but usually by the next morning, by the time 10 o'clock rolls around, I got my mojo back. So we practice usually 10 in the afternoon, and there's never a day I don't go in there with tremendous energy. And sometimes that's dialed up in some other areas, like when we don't rebound, it comes across as aggressive. But there's not a day that I don't have tremendous energy when I go in there. And I love what I do. I love the opportunity to be around these young people and help them navigate this path and improve and have opportunities and all those things. And so you have to take time to think about that when you have, because it's challenging. It's challenging. I mean, I can look at my track record as an assistant coach, as a head coach. I mean, call it luck. I've been really lucky. I've had a lot of winning go on. And so then when you have a stretch like this, it's unfamiliar territory, right? And this was similar last year. And these are just completely foreign places for me to ever be. And so there is a level of, you have to meet that head on and acknowledge that and then work your way through it. But like I said, I'm a pretty positive guy when it's all said and done. I believe in my guys. So it's not very long for me to turn the page from frustration to, when I look at why I'm frustrated and then what we should and could be doing, to motivated. And that happens pretty quickly for me.
That's a good question because, man, that's a lot of losing, especially if you're not used to losing. And we've seen a lot of losing in the last 2 years for South Carolina under Lamont. But a couple years ago, we saw a lot of winning in that one season with the trip to the NCAA tournament. And I had a buddy of mine who was a GM in professional sports, and he said the toughest thing to do is get the stink of losing out of your locker room and your organization. Once losing gets in there and they get their own office and they start decorating it, and losing's walking around, hitting the coffee, making friends, just chilling. It's the toughest thing to get out of your organization and your locker room or your clubhouse or whatever. Because once it sinks in, it's tough to not go, here we go again. It's tough not to go, woe is me. It's tough not to get mad, to get angry. Things that you look at one way when you're winning, you look at it totally different and in a negative light when you're losing. And it's just difficult. And Lamont's saying, no, I'm a positive guy. We keep moving forward. I get a little bummed, have trouble sleeping, but by Tuesday I got it out of my system and we're moving forward. Well, think about every player. Ask that question to every player. How are you dealing with this? And see what their answer is. It ain't easy. And once you have that mindset start to creep in on you, you just can't help it. You can't. So a very interesting answer from Lamont Paris. I will pop back in. We talked about men's basketball. Let's shift it over to what happened with baseball over the weekend, winning 2 out of 3 from the service academies. We'll hear from Paul Maneri discussing kind of like Will Craddock and what the freshman's done here in the last few days. Co-freshman of the week in the SEC, by the way, is Will Craddock. Also, we have our Spring Golf Classic at Charwood, Friday, April 3rd. Featuring Saki's Morning Libations Bar, also onion sausage provided by Lexington Gamecock Club, and the golf gun is back. $400 a team. Just call Charwood 803-755-2000 and press 2 to register. Come back, hear from the baseball coach. That is next here on the Postgame Show, here on the Game Network, and at the Game TV Radio on YouTube. I was waiting for my traffic link, which had crashed. It's uncrashed now. So the traffic link had an accident. Anyway, all right, accidents. In Columbia, Bluff Road at Pineview Drive, also Clemson Road at Two Notch, I-20 eastbound, between exits 92 and 98. That's US 601 and US 521. Spear Creek Church Road at Jacobs Mill Pond Road. Also Sumter Street at Taylor Street, Western Lane at Broad River Road. All right, time to talk some baseball. Of course, we yapped with Paul Maneri at 3:30. We're going to try to re-rack that for the Gamecock Notebook in case you missed it. We'll get Coach's thoughts on a bunch of different things. Where his team's at now compared to last year. You know, his thoughts on Will Craddock, Riley Goodman. Also, his thoughts on would he like to play an exhibition game. Shane Beamer always talks about playing preseason game. Would Paul Maneri like a little exhibition game? Because they don't get to do that right before the season starts in college baseball. They do get to play fall against folks, but not leading up to the start of the season. So we got a bunch of different things, and Paul Maneri comments on the Clemson series, so all sorts of stuff with Coach, and we'll re-rack that for you at 5:15 in the Gamecock Notebook. Now, Paul Maneri talked post-game after the win over Air Force yesterday, 4-2. Here is Coach. Will Craddock, the freshman, had himself a weekend with 5 hits. He's the co-SEC Freshman of the Week. Here is Coach Maneri talking about Will Craddock, his leadoff homer yesterday against Air Force.
Oh, he crushed that. I thought it was, on a normal day, it would have been way out of the park to right field. He's got power the other way, but the wind was so hard cutting across. It wasn't really helping balls even to right field. It was hurting balls because the wind was really cutting across hard. And then the kid looked like he was camped under it. And I was like, I can't believe that's not going out of here because he crushed it. And then, but the kid had actually lost it. He had lost it in the sun. The ball went behind him a few feet and was out of the park. But I thought when he hit it, you know, I'm used to, I can pretty much judge when a ball is going to be gone or not after being as old as I am and seeing so many balls hit through the years. But, you know, I thought Will crushed it. And he told me, he goes, oh, when I hit it, it was no doubt it was gone. And we were fortunate it went out. The wind was really, when I went to bed last night and last thing I did was looked at the Weather Channel and I saw 20-mile-an-hour winds. I said, oh my goodness, and I could see they were west-northwest winds. They were more north than they were west winds for most of the night.
So, Coach, talking about the wind, and the wind was a thing yesterday. Like if you walked outside, just if you were going to the grocery store or whatever, the wind was a thing. And, you know, sometimes the wind's your buddy and sometimes it's not in a baseball game. So there's Coach Maneri talking about Will Craddock's leadoff homer. Also, we've talked a lot about Talmadge LeCroy and how good he's been offensively this year so far for South Carolina. But here's Paul Maneri talking about Talmadge LeCroy calling pitches behind the plate. Here is Coach Maneri about LeCroy.
Well, you know, when we talked to him about coming back, you know, for the 5th year last summer, he and I had him come over to see me one day, and we sat and talked about it. And I've only done it with one other catcher in my coaching career, a kid by the name of Paul O'Toole, who was a senior, 4th-year senior at Notre Dame. And we went to the World Series that year with him calling the pitches the whole year. And, you know, the game just moves quicker, and the catcher is so engaged with the pitcher. But Terry does a great job of talking to them about pitch sequences and what, you know, it's like Talmadge mentioned about scouting reports and so forth. And then, you know, every so often Terry will call in a pitch, or I'll tell Terry a pitch to call in. So it's a team effort, but Talmadge calls the majority of the pitches. And I just felt like Talmadge is unique in the sense that he's a real baseball rat. Like, he could tell you who was the starting shortstop for Cal State Fullerton in 1993, stuff like that. He's just such a student of college baseball in particular, but baseball in general. And I just felt like he had that kind of unique sense that a lot of young kids don't have, that he could call a good game. So we did it in the fall. And man, the pitchers loved it, and they pitched well, and so I talked to Terry in December, and I said, how you feel about, and he's like, hey, I think we should do it, and just know that we can call in pitches if we want to, and we probably call in maybe 10 pitches the whole game, and he does the rest of them.
What's interesting about that is that's a rarity for college catchers. Like, Coach Maneri was just saying, he's only done it one other time in his career. And if you can get a catcher that in tune with the pitchers and you trust the catcher that much to call pitches and call the game, a lot of pitchers will say they really dig that when they can get into that rhythm with the catcher, and the catcher's calling pitches and the pitcher doesn't have to shake them off. They got a rhythm. They're in sync. Now, if this lasts the whole year, I don't know. But right now, Talmadge LeCroy is doing a heck of a job behind the plate calling pitches, and also has really been off to a good start at the plate. All right, final thing from Coach is Paul Maneri talking about the weekend after losing Friday to Army, which was a tough loss in a game that you were like, wow, that didn't go the way you would think. South Carolina bounced back and won 2 in a row to take the weekend series with the Service Academies. Here is Paul Maneri talking about what the weekend did for the team, if anything.
Well, I think, we grow every day, Jack, and I told these kids, look, I told our players, these kids from these other teams, they are not afraid of us. They're not afraid of anybody. And if you look at Kaz's schedule that he puts together, they go play everybody. I don't know. Midweek, weekend, they play the top teams in the country, so they're going to play fearless. And it's the way they're brought up. I mentioned Army had, I think, 7 seniors in their starting lineup. So those kids have been through the grind of 3.5+ years of a military academy. They're not going to be afraid of in a baseball game. For them, these are the fields of friendly strife. So our players were ready for the challenge, and I think that was good for our team. There'll be more talented teams on our schedule for sure, but nobody will ever play harder or compete harder than these kids do. So that's good for our team to kind of have to battle for it. And I thought for the most part, the Army game was terrible, but these last 2 games, I thought there were a lot of good things. I'm not concerned that we didn't get a ton of runs and a ton of hits tonight, because I really do believe that their relief pitching was really good. See, they were supposed to play College of Charleston tomorrow, but that game was canceled, and so they were able to use everybody out of their bullpen today that they probably were going to save for tomorrow for a 4th game. So that made it a little more challenging for us. So I think we grew. We'll see how much by the end of next weekend.
And obviously the Clemson series it's that first gauge. It just is. It's that first barometer of where you at as a team for the players and for Coach Maneri and obviously the athletic program, but also for fans to see where the team is at. Last year didn't go well, obviously, and the whole season didn't go well. So we'll get a nice little what were those way stations on the side of the road? Little way station stop for South Carolina. Just kind of check the weight and the tires and everything else before you keep moving on. You'll also have a series that'll tell you a little something against North Carolina before you roll into SEC play. Last night, though, Brandon Stone, 3 innings, only gave up 3 hits and an earned run, struck out 5, did walk 2. So that's 5 hitters on in 3 innings. You like to a little bit lower than that. Stone, the only run he gave up was on a homer. And again, you had a lot of kooky wind, even though a homer's a homer. But then, Logan Prisco, 1 inning and 3rd, gave up a run. Then Zach Russell, inning and 2/3 scoreless. Alex Valentin, 3 innings. So your last 4 2/3 innings, you really shut the door on Air Force. So nice job by the South Carolina pitching staff in that 4-2 win over the Air Force Academy. I will jump back in case you missed it. South Carolina, the women get their share of the SEC regular season title with that win over Ole Miss last night. We heard Dawn Staley talking about Medina Okot. All of a sudden, she's hitting threes. She's putting the ball on the deck and going to the rack. I mean, Okot's playing like a player possessed. We'll hear what Dawn says about her coming back, and also we'll yap a little bit about South Carolina women's basketball. Hey, you go to 1075thegame.com, you click on that little section that says Sweet Deals. The Columbia YMCA, our featured sweet deal, 50% off a 6-month membership. I want to get my phone out real quick. That's half off. Look at that. Just go to 1075thegame.com and check out Sweet Deals. Come back, hear from Dawn Staley next on the postgame show. Terry Ford, appreciate you hanging as we roll up until 6 on the game. Time for a quick check on the traffic. Few accidents in Columbia, Bluff Road at Pineview Road. Also Clemson Road at Two Notch, I-20 eastbound between exits 92 and 98. Spear Creek Church Road at Jacobs Mill Pond Road. Sumter at Taylor and Western Lane at Broad River Road. Post-game show, Terry Ford, appreciate you hanging out with us. Like I said, our buddy Jay Phillips out of the hospital. Hopefully today he is home as he continues his recovery. And we're, again, banking on old Jay to be with us hopefully in 2 weeks. That'll be our goal. But everything so far so good. Thumbs up for Jay. All right, so the women get a share of the SEC regular season title with a W over Ole Miss, and it wasn't even as close as a score, and the score wasn't close. 85-48, a 37-point whooping that South Carolina dropped on the Rebels. And look, Ole Miss was tired. They'd played a lot of games in a lot of days, and South Carolina, and even if Ole Miss would have been fresh, it maybe would have been only a 15, 20-point loss, 25, whatever. But South Carolina handling Ole Miss, a lot of points off of turnovers for South Carolina. Joyce Edwards, good game for Joyce, as she once again went over 20 with 21 points. Medina Okut was I mean, she's hitting threes. I mean, she struggled. It was interesting. She hit 3 out of 3 from three-point range, but was only 2 for 8 at the rim. She had a couple of nice short drives to the rack, and she just couldn't finish the play. Okot was very aggressive and looked very confident yesterday. Like I said, she hit 3 threes. She was 3 for 3. But the ironic part is she struggled so much at the rim at 2 of 8, but ended up with also in this game double-digit rebounds, another double-double. Here's Dawn Staley post-game talking about Medina and all this confidence she's playing with now.
It always makes me feel really good, like almost emotional when you see a young person go through some stuff and they really can't see they way out of it, but you just continue to work with them. Hey, you're going to hurdle this. You're going to get through just each and every day. You take the pressure off, and then you apply the pressure, because we took the pressure off, and then Medina started to get comfortable with it, and then I wasn't, right? I'm like, nope, this is what's going to happen. And then she walked into it, and it's great. Like I mean, she even says she's back. And when they're able to verbalize that, they're in a really good place. And then because of that, you're seeing the results. She's the same Medina. She really is the same one. Sometimes, I mean, she was still getting double-double. She was still doing her thing, but for her, it didn't feel like it. But now she's walking in what she's feeling, which is great.
She's walking in what she's feeling. She's confident. I thought it was interesting with Dawn saying, look, she might have been putting up some numbers, but she just didn't look confident in doing what she was doing. Now she's putting up numbers and she's confident. And if Medina's making threes and she can, also finish like she does most of the time at the rim, that's an interesting matchup problem for the opposition. Just is. And let's say, like for an example, if you're going up against a team with bigs, and if Medina can step out and hit a couple threes and you pull the other team's big from the basket, that gives you a lot of space to operate going to the rack without dealing with a big trying to block or alter a shot. So, I mean, we'll see where it goes, but Okot 3 for 3 from 3 yesterday in the win. And look, the women are in a nice spot. Joyce Edwards, she struggled a bit at the rim yesterday, 2-4-10, but overall 21 points in the game, went 7-7 from the free throw line. That was big. Also, Tanaya Latson, she was in double digits with 13. She was very efficient. Matter of fact, she was 5 for 5 at the rim. And then she hit a 3 with 2 attempts. And Latson, we talked about this, she'll get you a bucket you need when, like, a play breaks down or the shot clock's getting low. You need somebody to go, hey, give me the ball, I'll go create something, just please get out of my way. That's who Latson is. And she had a solid game with 13. So South Carolina gets the W, 85-48 over Ole Miss. Also in college basketball, what a hell of a weekend in college hoops. Duke is back as the AP #1 team. Not that it matters. Duke and Michigan. That was a heavyweight fight. We could see that as the national championship game, right? Or a Final Four contest. They're both that good. And I love Cam Boozer's game. I know he's a freshman, but man, what a high basketball IQ. It's just sick. You give Cam Boozer the ball right around the top of the key or the free throw line and let him create plays for himself or others. It's fun to watch. So that was a huge game. BYU beats Iowa State. And I'll say this now. If I got the #1 pick overall, I'm taking A.J. DeBansta. I just am. I'm taking that kid from BYU. He was, man, played all 40 minutes. He was scoring. He was passing. He was pulling down some boards. He was playing some D. He was intense. He was out there wanting to win. He was everything Darren Peterson of Kansas isn't. #1, he played 40 minutes. Hell, Darren Peterson doesn't do that in a week. I'm sorry. There's some things that matter that it feels like scouts don't look at. And one thing is, I don't know, availability. I don't know intensity. I don't know the intense desire and ache to win. I don't know, the scoreboard's more important than my stats. I don't know. I've got the flu. I can't play. Darren Peterson is so talented, but does he love basketball? Or is he just really, really good at it and knows he can make a lot of money? So he likes it. There's a difference between liking and loving something. Ben Simmons never loved basketball. He liked it and he was really good at it. He got to the NBA, played hard for a while, then met a Kardashian, and all hell broke loose. Ben Simmons never loved basketball. If he did, he'd have locked himself in a gym and shot about 1,000 perimeter jumpers and threes a day so he could actually make a jump shot, so he could actually be a better offensive player to help his team. Ben Simmons never did it. I look at Darren Peterson. Is he going to be this decade's version of Ben Simmons? A guy who likes ball but doesn't love ball. A.J. DeBansta loved basketball. That dude was competing. He's gotten better as the season's gone along. I mean, I'll take that guy. You can have the dude at Kansas who, when he's in the mood, looks great. You can have that. I'll take the guy at BYU who's busting his ass to win and has a ton of skill. I'll take that guy. The draft's going to be interesting. And Cam Boozer, I'll take Cam Boozer over Darren Peterson too. I will, because Cam Boozer's a flat-out winner. All right, 5 o'clock news coming up from Integrated Media. That is next here on the Postgame Show with Terry Ford. Thanks for hanging. All right, checking the traffic at the top of the hour. Few accidents. Still have one at Western Lane at Broad River Road. Sumter at Taylor still happening. Also, Spear Creek Church at Jacobs Mill Pond. I-20 eastbound between exits 92 and 98. Clemson Road at Two Notch and Bluff Road at Pineview Drive. The same list. They're still working on getting those cleared up. We'll pop back at the 5 o'clock news, sponsored by Integrated Media. And at 5:15, we'll re-rack our conversation with South Carolina baseball coach Paul Maneri. Talk to him at 3:30. We'll pop it for you at 5:15 during the Gamecock Notebook. All that's coming up on the post-game show. Appreciate you hanging out with us. We go another hour here on the Game Network, and our YouTube channel at the Game TV Radio. Time to check the old 5 o'clock news, sponsored by our pals Integrated Media. We talked about it an hour ago in the Olympics. The U.S. wins the gold medal in men's hockey, beating Canada in just a hell of a game, 2-1 in overtime. Jack Hughes, after getting his teeth knocked out, scores the game winner in OT, and he's sitting there skating around. A couple of chiclets gone. Big bloody spot where he used to have teeth, and the dude is ridiculously happy. And, and I saw that, and I'm thinking about just hockey players are different, man. They just are. And, it's just different than any sport. I mean, football, you got tough guys, too, who can push that bone back in and go play. Get his teeth knocked out. Ronnie Lott's ripping his pinky off so you can keep playing. You have some guys to that level of crazy that hockey players are. Hockey players, though, man, again, teeth knocked out, slashes across their face, their lips are busted open, bleeding and bloody everywhere, and they just keep playing. They don't care. They don't care. A buddy of mine texts me. It's like, yeah, just like basketball players, Tara. Because the guy knows I love hoops. I'm just like, it's different. Yeah, there's no load management in the NHL, like in the NBA. I'd love to see like a front office type in the NHL. Analytics. He's got his medical team, and he goes to the head coach. Yeah, excuse me. Excuse me. My analytic team and I came up with an idea that you should probably rest your players every 2.344 games. We should rotate, maybe sit some guys down. It's called load management in the NBA. That GM would lose his teeth. They don't do load management in the NHL. There's no load management. These guys just play, man. They play through, busted faces and knocked out teeth and ripped off ears and bloody noses and busted faces. And I said this at 4 o'clock hour, all these guys were getting medals, and half of them had like cuts on their face, and their lips are all red, not from lipstick, blood. Hockey players they're just different. They really are. But that was fun yesterday. We had a comment on the chat at the Game TV Radio that said, Canada was better every way, shape, or form except for goalie. Yeah, and you're right. Again, Connor Hellenbach, if it wasn't for O'Connor playing the game of his life between the pipes, the U.S. would have lost. But that's the other cool thing about hockey. If your goalie is playing out of his mind, nothing else typically matters. Because they're not getting anything by him. You just got to score enough goals to win, because your goalie's giving up nothing. And that's what happened yesterday. Connor was, and he's won the Vezina Trophy multiple times, which is for the best goaltender in the league. It's just in the biggest moments in Hellenbuck's career, he has soiled himself in some of the biggest games in the postseason. Sometimes, playing for Team USA, whatever the case. He's had some moments where he hasn't come up big. All that is forgiven because Connor played to his abilities yesterday. But yeah, one of our chatters is absolutely right. Everywhere but goalie, Canada was better yesterday, but that doesn't matter when your goalie is playing like a Hall of Famer. Doesn't matter. He just doesn't. And the cool thing, look, I said this in the opening of the show. I am a massive Olympic nerd. I love it. And I don't know, maybe it's just the idea that we all, will get together and root for Team USA, especially today when no one agrees on anything. Everybody disagrees on everything. And now if you disagree with me, I hate you or you hate me because you disagree with me. Whatever. Makes my head hurt. But we can all stop and agree that we're all rooting for the United States, which is cool. And I think that's one of the great things about the Olympics. And we were talking about it upstairs. It was myself and Elijah and our guy on B106, Leo, LB. And LB and I are old enough to remember being young dudes when, the U.S. won in Lake Placid in 1980. We were kids. And I said, what I remember about it, besides obviously the game, was when the U.S. beat the Russians. I'll never forget, and I read about this in multiple places and heard about it, that people just stopped their cars on the street, pulled over, got out of their cars, and just started hugging each other. People don't even know each other. They're listening to the game on the radio, because back in those days, you listened on the radio. And when the U.S. beat the Russians and that thing went to zeros, people are honking their horns, they're pulling over, getting out of cars, they're hugging, just people, strangers. Because we're all Americans rooting for the U.S. And that game was that big and that important in this country in 1980. Because, again, we had deep recession. We had gas lines. We had hostages in Iran that we couldn't get. And when we tried, we looked stupid for whatever reason. That doesn't matter. And everything in our country was going sideways and in the crapper, and it was just bad. It was bad. And of course, the Russians at that point, you still had, the communists and us, the kings of democracy, and we were still hating each other, and there was an Iron Curtain and all that stuff. And it all we were so frustrated as a country, we needed something good. We just needed something good. And for some reason, we all hitched our wagon to this crew of college players and one guy named Aruzioni that played in the minors a little bit. And we hitched our wagon to it because they started winning. The first game they tied. Then they started winning and started winning. Then all of a sudden, oh my God, they're playing the Russians. And if they can find a way to beat the Russians, they could actually play for the gold medal. And the Russians played the U.S. in a exhibition game in Madison Square Garden and beat them like 100-0 or 10-1 or whatever it was. So not many people thought that the Americans had a shot. And so we as a country were just like into it, but we were like, these Russians are really good, man. They beat like NHL teams. And we just needed something, though, as a country. And that crew gave us something. And that's why I think for the people who were alive for that, it meant so much. And why we as a country just went insane when the U.S. beat the Russians. Because it was more than just beating the Russians in a hockey game. It was beating those dirty communists, us Americans. And it was, man, we just needed something good, something positive. Because everything was so not positive at that time. So yesterday was great. I loved it. I really did, man. It was fun to watch. being an American, the pride of beating Canada at their own game. And, Hughes with the overtime goal. And like I said, the Gaudreau, honoring Johnny Gaudreau in the post game and all the stuff that went into that victory. And again, Helen Buck, a historic performance between the pipes. All that was great and wonderful. And it was great for U.S. hockey to finally, get to a point where they're looked at right there with the Canadians. But man, 1980 was just something different. And it was more than just a hockey game. It just really was. And if you lived it, you know what I'm talking about. What's that thing you say now? If you know, you know. If you know, you know. But yesterday was still great. And the U.S. had a fantastic Olympics, the most gold medals they've ever had, and I think the most total medals they've ever had, finishing second behind Norway. And Norway wins like 7 billion medals. In sports, we don't know what the heck they are, right? You're skiing, you're shooting a gun, then you're wrestling a bear, and after that, you're like, I don't know, ice dancing. It's just some of the sports the Norwegians are good at. You go, what is that? Whatever it is, it looks kind of cool. Like skiing, I guess skiing around the woods and shooting stuff. I don't know. And they win a lot of speed skating and the things they're good at, they're really good at. So they lead the way, and the U.S. finish second. All right, 5 o'clock news sponsored by Integrated Media here on the Post-Game Show. Terry Ford, appreciate you hanging out with us. A few pieces of news. The NFL, the competition committee, is discussing the possibility of authorizing replay officials to throw flags for specific penalties. I'm reading right from the story. The appetite in the league might be limited for what could be a major change in the league's officiating approach. Some members are kind of rallying around a possible entry point of non-football acts that have gone unpenalized by on-field officials. NFL Executive VP of Football Operations Troy Vincent suggested the possibility Monday while speaking to reporters during a break in the meeting. Quote, you don't want to just be expanding the Pandora's box, but we believe that things like the Non-Football Act can really, really restrict what that is. That's something that we believe in potentially, but there's a little bit of tweaking in the language that might be a first step. 2 examples. Fourth quarter of the Super Bowl, Patriot receiver Stephon Diggs and Seahawks corner Josh Jobe grabbed each other's face mask on the sidelines. Jobe delivered a left-handed punch to Diggs' helmet. There was no penalty flag thrown. But if the NFL enacts this, there could be an on-site replay official that could penalize and eject Jobe for the punch. I am all for that. I'm sorry. What I'd like, and they'll never do it, is just you still only get 3 challenges, okay? You still only get 3, but you can challenge anything. Why is that so difficult? Why can't, throw a challenge flag. I think my guy got interfered with. Okay, let's go check it. Yep. Guy back in New York agrees. You get the ball at the 22-yard line, 1st and 10. Open everything up to being able to ask for a challenge, but you still only get 3 challenges. That will not slow the game down because you're not giving extra challenges. You get the same amount of challenges, but you can open up the door and challenge anything. Then you're not having this conversation we're having right now. I would love to see some things get cleaned up because, look, officiating stinks. Let's just be honest. And it's because it's a no-win job. You got these middle-aged dudes or guys in their 30s or 40s or 50s chasing around guys in the peak of athletic condition in their 20s, who run as fast as, a Lexus, can lift the Bank of America building. And it's tough for these guys to officiate a game that fast. It's just tough. They miss stuff. They don't hate your team. They just suck at officiating sometimes because the game's too bleeping fast. And by the way, both sides are trying to break the rules on every play. They're coached to push the limits of the rules. The Seattle Seahawks Legion of Boom, they were taught hold on every play. They can't throw a penalty flag on every down. How do you officiate that? It's just it's an impossible job to be good at. And plus, these guys are part-time, which, again, that's another conversation for another day. I think you should find a way to make them full-time. How much would that help? A little, I think. Can't hurt, right? So I've always been for just give 3 challenges, but you can challenge anything. Because the goal is to get it right. But the NFL doesn't want to do that, so we got this. We're going to have our on-site replay official, and if he sees something, he'll throw a flag, and then he'll call whatever the on-field official missed. I guess it's progress in the right direction to get stuff right, but still. That's what the NFL is mulling over. All right, it's 5 o'clock news sponsored by Bud's Integrated Media. We'll come back, re-rack our conversation with South Carolina Gamecock head baseball coach Paul Mainieri up next here on the post-game show with Terry Ford. Thanks for hanging. We're doing this up until 6 here on The Game and The Game Network, and it's our YouTube channel at The Game TV Radio. CHW Cabinetry. I'm sitting here looking at the website right now, CHW Cabinetry, and looking at the quality work. They got these white cabinets, right? In this white kitchen, it look really cool. I think I want to take the back seats out of my car and replace them with cabinets. Maybe I'll see if I'll talk to Star about that. Star and her crew, they do fabulous work inside, outside, wherever you need cabinets, they'll take care of it for you. You call 803-520-6837. You talk about what you want to do, talk about your budget. CHW Cabinetry will sit down with you and talk you through it. And then once they start to get the job done for you, they do this thing called photorealistic renderings, which are fantastic. You get to see the job, total transparency from beginning to end, and they are with you when it comes to customer service all the way through. Again, 803-520-6837. You don't believe me? Just give them a ring and go through the process with them. You will not regret it. CHW Cabinetry, 2-Notch in Lexington, 803-520-6837. All right, we talked to Paul Maneri, our weekly visit with the Gamecock baseball coach at 3:30. In case you missed it, I want to re-rack it for you real quick. We started off with Coach asking him about, he's sitting there coaching against Air Force yesterday. Paul Maneri, early in his career, coached the Air Force Academy. So we just started off by saying, Coach, when you're sitting there and you're looking across at the Air Force, do you get some memories from back in the day?
Be quite honest with you, I do. It was a very special time in my personal life to have the opportunity to be the first civilian baseball coach at the United States Air Force Academy. And I had so many wonderful young men. It was really amazing. Yesterday, right before the game, somebody came up to my dugout. It was a former player of mine that I remembered very vividly hitting a 3-run home run against BYU in the 9th inning to win the game 15-14 for us. And, of course, when I look across at the dugout, Mike Kozlowski was a sophomore, junior, and senior in my first 3 years out there, and he's like a son to me, and he's done a tremendous job coaching the team after serving as a C-17 pilot in the Air Force. So, all those young men over there, they're the custodians of our way of life, and I respect them so greatly, and truthfully don't really like playing against Air Force because I root for them all the time, except, of course, the game that we play against them. But I thought the weekend went really great overall. I wish we'd have won one more game, of course, played better against Army. But, I think it meant a lot to all the cadets and midshipmen. I think it meant a lot to our fans. I know it meant a lot to our own players. And it was a special weekend.
You speak of the weekend, and one of the positives, we're talking to Coach Paul Maneri, head coach, of course, South Carolina Gamecocks, here on the postgame show. Will Craddock had himself a weekend. Your freshman was just named SEC Freshman of the Week. Let him off a couple of games, hit you a couple homers, 5 hits overall the weekend. And typically, and you've coached many years, and some freshmen are more ready than others. And talk about when you realized how at what point that Will Craddock could be ready. I know it's early and there's a long way to go for him. There'll be ups and downs. But when did you think he was going to be a guy maybe could be more ready than others as a freshman?
I'll tell you why. First of all, his physicality. He's a extremely strong young man. He's, in excess of 230 pounds or almost 230 pounds, I think. And he's really built his strength. And, man, when he hits them a long way. So obviously the physical part of it. But, look, I've seen a lot of freshmen that look the part but can't really play the part yet. Will has an uncanny ability to have composure and poise, self-confidence. He's not boisterous and he's not flashy, in the sense of bring the attention to me. He's very humble. But he's not afraid out there, and he competes really hard, and he plays the whole game. I just met with him a few minutes ago, and I said, look, I love the way you hit, Will, and that's obviously a big part of your success, but, making plays on defense and running the bases well and just being such a good teammate, all those things add into it to make him a really special player and a special person. And I think he's going to have a great career here at South Carolina. I think he's going to go on from here and have a great career in professional baseball.
Coach Paul Maneri hanging out with us, talking Gamecock baseball here on the postgame show on the Game Network. Coach, you look early this year so far. You've had a ton of lineup combinations, tweaking and moving guys here and there in the lineup, and just kind of open up your head for us and kind of give us your thought process as you tinker with a lineup early in the year. Is this something you like to do in general? Have you had years where you just knew your set lineup and you moved forward just knowing this was what it's going to be because the club was set so much? Kind of give us your thought process as you go through setting up lineups early this year.
Well, this is a time to experiment and see what guys can do. One thing about college baseball is we don't have exhibition games before the season. We got to have a couple in the fall, but the springtime is a lot different than the fall. And, you have to play the games. I mean, some guys can look great in practice, maybe even look great in scrimmage games, but then when the bell rings, they're not quite the player they were in the practice games when there's all of a sudden the lights are turned on, there's people in the stands, and the games really count. And the vice versa happens. Some kids don't show that great in the inter-squad games, but then when the bright lights go on, they take their game to another level. So, look, I like to give everybody an opportunity and kind of play their way into it or play their way out of it. So during these first couple of weeks, certainly try a lot of different combinations and a lot of different things, and we'll still continue to do that. But we do have a big series coming up this weekend that is just like an SEC series, when you play Clemson. So you want to try to put your best team out there for sure in those games, and hopefully we'll find the right solution to be able to have success this weekend.
You brought up an interesting thing about having exhibition games leading up to the season. Shane Beamer has been very vocal. He'd love to have a preseason game in college football before season started. Would you be a guy to have a few exhibition games before you start for real? Would that be something you'd like, or you're old school and say this is the way we do it, and it's okay with me?
No, I would love to have a couple of games against somebody else. Opening day, I'm telling you, I've coached in World Series games, national championship games, conference tournament championship games. I'm never more nervous than I am on opening day of the season, just because it's the unknown. You just haven't seen your guys out there against another team, and you're not really sure, 100% sure what you have until you start competing against other teams. And then as you go through the season, nothing's perfect, of course, but there's ups and there's downs, and some guys perform, some guys struggle, and some guys get injured. All those kind of things take place until eventually you come to the right combination of guys. And one of the things that I've, last year notwithstanding, one of the things I've usually taken pride in is that our team gets better as the year goes on. And I think it's because I give guys a lot of guys a chance to prove themselves and show what they can do. And when they get their opportunity, they take advantage of it and make us a stronger team going forward.
Paul Mainieri, head coach, Carolina baseball, with us here on the Postgame Show on the Game Network. Alex Valentin, 3 scoreless for you to shut the door on Air Force. Only gave up a hit, struck out 3. Kind of talk about that appearance for Valentin and what you see for him right now as a role in the pen.
Well, Alex has been great. He's pitched in 3 games for us. I'm not sure without his performance in all 3 of those games if we win them. So he's got 2 saves, and his other outing was really solid. So Alex is a very good pitcher. He transferred from Texas State, and he's a strong personality. When you watch him on the mound, you can see he's very confident. He's really fearless, and he goes after the hitters. He's just not afraid of anybody. And he's got talent too. His left-handed fastball up to 94 miles an hour plays big, but he's also got a really good changeup and a really good slider. So he didn't need to use his changeup as much last night. He was pretty much overpowering them, especially into the conditions with the strong wind blowing. But he'll continue to be something huge for us. I mean, listen, I could start him. I could use him as a long reliever. I could use him as a closer. He's kind of like the Swiss Army knife, and I think he'd be successful in any role. But right now I'm going to keep him in the bullpen, and I think that's where he can affect the most games.
Last thing for you, Coach. Riley Goodman, first start, did have some base runners, but wiggled through the trouble, showed the arm talent, didn't give up any runs in 3+ innings, 3+ innings against Army. Had some base runners this time, couldn't wiggle out of it, gave up 3 earned runs. Is this just, hey, he's coming back from Tommy John, and there's going to be some highs and lows? Did you see some stuff that you got to really get corrected with Riley? What went on with Goodman after 2 starts to you?
You got to remember Riley had never pitched in a college baseball game until his first start 2 weeks ago. So he's a very talented kid. There's no question about it. Like you mentioned, his arm talent, throws 96, got a good slider, good changeup. But there's going to be some rough times as he's growing into college baseball. He hurt his arm when he was in high school, had Tommy John surgery, spent all year last year rehabbing. And, because we had 2 guys go down early for us, Philpott and McCoy, Riley probably jumped from 3rd or 4th starter to the Friday night starter without any college experience. We thought that was the right thing to do, but we probably pushed him a little too quickly. So I think he's going to settle in, and he's going to do fine. I think the kid's got a lot of talent, and I think he's going to keep developing and getting better. But there are going to be bumps along the way.
All right, I lied. I got 2 minutes. I want to ask you one more quick question while I got you. Okay, here you are, year 2 at South Carolina, about 8 games in at this point. Last year, you had come out of retirement. Your first couple weeks, you're 8 games in. What's the feeling now, an extra year in from being away than it was at this time last year?
Well, last year I think we were undefeated at this time, and this year we've lost 2 games, and yet I feel much better about this team than I did last year's team. We had a couple of days where we didn't swing the bats well, and obviously the first game against Army, Riley struggled at the beginning, and we got into a hole. But I think this team's going to continue to get better and better. And the biggest reason for my optimism is I do think we have some pitching depth. Our bullpen has been terrific all year, and at least in these first 8 games, except for the one game against Army, when Josh Gunther struggled coming out of the bullpen. But outside of that, our bullpen's been really great, and we're going to get Philpott, and we're going to get Horowitz back, which is only going to strengthen our staff. And if we can get this rotation figured out, I think we've got a chance to be pretty competitive on them.
And there's Paul Maneri, our discussion with him earlier today in the 3 o'clock hour. Pop back in here. Our drive around the SEC is next on the post-game show here on The Game and The Game Network. Quick check on the traffic. We have a few accidents. 2 Notch at Ross Road's a new one. Also Sumter at Taylor, I-20 westbound at Broad River Road, exit 65. Bush River Road at I-20 and Bush River Road at I-26. We have a couple accidents to get to. Bush River Road at I-26, also Bush River Road at I-20, I-20 westbound at Broad River Road, exit 65, Sumter at Taylor in Columbia, and also 2 Notch at Ross Road. We got a few accidents to get to, some new ones. Bush River Road at I-26. Also Bush River Road at I-20. I-20 westbound at Broad River Road, exit 65. Also Sumter at Taylor and Two Notch at Ross. Got some slow traffic as well in Lexington, I-26 westbound between US 378 and I-20. And I-20 between Highway 215, Monticello Road, which is exit 68, obviously, and Bush River Road at exit 63. We'll come back and drive around the SEC. Charles Bediako back in the news to a surprise of, well, really no one. That's next on the postgame show. Well, just weeks after a judge stopped his second run as a college basketball player, Charles Bediako is asking the Alabama Supreme Court to give him interim injunctive relief so he can play the rest of the season for the Alabama Crimson Tide. I mean, did we think this was over? Of course not. Bediako's attorneys made the request of the court on Monday while the center's appeal of a circuit court judge's denial of a preliminary injunction to continue playing moves forward. You totally confused? Good. I mean, this doesn't come up on an episode of Law & Order. Sorry. So basically, from what I'm reading, Bediako already has appealed that circuit court judge's denial of a preliminary injunction that he had to continue playing basketball. Basically, a Alabama judge, which is stunning to me, told Bediako that, they could not continue his injunction or his temporary restraining order to play for the rest of the season. After Bediako, in a first judgment, got the approval to play. Now, Bediako's crew is appealing that circuit court judge's denial of his injunction because that stopped him from playing. So while they're appealing that, they're going to the Alabama Supreme Court to give him interim injunctive relief so he can play the rest of the year, while he is basically fighting the other judge's ruling. Basically, it's just, I got to find a way to play the rest of the year. That's all I want. I want to play the rest of the year, and I'm going to do anything I can to do it. That's all that matters here. It doesn't even matter if you lose the case when the season's over. You just want to play the rest of the year if you're Charles Bediako and if you're Alabama. Now, Alabama, according to this post, is also going to get involved in the whole legal mumbo-jumbo as well by filing something so Bediako can play. Now, I agree with the Tuscaloosa County Circuit Court judge who ruled earlier this month players can't play in the NBA and then come back to college. I agree with that 100%. I think it's ridiculous. And what has been going on, though, is lawyers argue that Bediako's professional experience is no different from the experiences of former European pros and also the kid James Njai, who played in the G League after being drafted, but then went back to college to play at Baylor. Bediako, to me, and let's just focus on Bediako, two things here. One, and this is just me, after way too much coffee and whatever could have been in it, I look at it this way. Once you declare that you're leaving college for the NBA, you're done. You're just done. You're finished. You had eligibility left. In Bediako's case, you knew the NBA was telling you that you were no better than the second-round draft pick tops. And you went undrafted. and you've been sitting in the G League on a two-way contract, that's like we dug this up. Was it like $650,000 or something? So obviously you're sitting around there. You're playing the G League. You're not in the NBA. Somehow, some way, either your people or Alabama's people or both got together, in some garage somewhere in a basement and said, "So where do you think we can get you back at Bama?" And they concocted a scheme. My guess is the NIL money that Bediako is getting is more money than he's getting in the G League, or you wouldn't go to Bama for less money. Duh. And they concocted this whole scheme. Now, I think once you declare you're out, you're out. And look, for these Europeans who play pro ball, we've talked about this. There are different levels of pro ball in Europe. Some of it is collegiate level basketball. They just don't have the collegiate basketball infrastructure that we do here in America. So, to me, to make this not confusing and not to make this a quote-unquote wink-wink double standard that a guy can use as a loophole to get over, the NCAA needs a uniform rule on when you're eligible and when you're not. Whether you're a kid playing in a pro league in somewhere in Serbia or whatever, and or a guy who is playing in the G League or whatever, you have to come up with a uniformed type of eligibility rule and requirement. You just do. And that would put an end to all this. It just would. Because you see what the lawyers are doing, right? Well, you have European pros playing in the NBA. Why can't, playing in college, rather. Why can't an American pro go back to college? If a European pro can leave a European league and go to play in American college basketball, why can't Charles Bediako leave the G League, not the NBA, but the G League, and go back and play in college? So if you're the NCAA, you got to fix this loophole. You just have to. Of course, whatever you do to fix it will probably get taken to court and you'll lose. But still, you got to try because this thing's a mess. All right, to the SEC over the weekend, we'll start with the men. Florida, Tennessee, Arkansas, Alabama, Georgia, Texas A&M, and Auburn all won. So right now, if you look at the standings in the SEC after that type of weekend, and Kentucky is in trouble, by the way. They're, running on fumes. Anyway, in the SEC, Florida leads at 12-2, a two-game lead over Alabama, Arkansas, and Tennessee. Texas A&M's 9-5. Longhorns are sitting at 8-6, along with Missouri, Vandy, and Kentucky. Georgia 7-7. Auburn 6-8, Mississippi State's 5-9, then South Carolina, Oklahoma, Ole Miss 3-11, LSU 3-12. So that's where we're at with the men. The women over the weekend, obviously South Carolina beat Ole Miss, but Texas victorious, as was Vanderbilt, barely over Kentucky in a battle of two ranked teams. LSU was victorious. Oklahoma in a battle of ranked teams beat Tennessee and Norman. Alabama over Florida. And Texas A&M beats Arkansas. So the standings right now for the women, obviously on top of South Carolina, clinching at least a share of the SEC championship yesterday in the beatdown of Ole Miss. Then Vanderbilt and Texas 11-3, LSU at 10-4. Then it's Oklahoma 9-5, Ole Miss 8-6, Tennessee 8-6. Alabama, Kentucky at 7-7, Georgia 6-7. Mississippi State's 5-9, so is Texas A&M, Florida, Missouri 4-10, Auburn 3-10, and Arkansas is 0-14. So that's a quick rundown of the SEC. Of course, South Carolina back at it against Kentucky tomorrow night. You can hear that right here on 107.5 The Game in Columbia, 6:30 pregame. All right, let's drive around the SEC. We'll pop back in here and take a look at the world from the wagering eyeball next on the postgame show on The Game Network, and our YouTube channel at The Game TV Radio. All right, coming up, best of the game at 6. Then we have Dan Patrick, Chuck Oliver, featuring our buddy Heath Klein there between 10 and midnight. And then Westwood One Sports Radio, that's what we have happening. Tomorrow, again, men's hoops against Kentucky here on 107.5 The Game in Columbia and our affiliate Myrtle Beach. That's 6:30 pregame, 7 o'clock tip. Wednesday, baseball here on The Game in Columbia and Myrtle Beach. 6:15 pregame as the Gamecocks host Queens. Thursday's Carolina Calls on 107.5 The Game in Columbia and also our affiliate in Myrtle Beach. 7:30 pregame, 8 o'clock tip, though, the women on our sister station, B106, your home of women's, Gamecock women's basketball on Thursday nights will be taking on Missouri. That's kind of the schedule we got going on here for the next few days. And obviously we get to baseball this weekend. Huge 3-game series with Clemson. Friday at Founders, Saturday at Segra, and then Sunday in the Upstate. All right, let's look at the wagering angle. A couple of games in men's college basketball with ranked teams involved. Number 24, Louisville, goes to number 18, North Carolina. Louisville is a 3.5-point favorite. Of course, North Carolina without their best player, Caleb Wilson. Louisville on the road this year. They lost to SMU, beat Wake Forest, lost to Duke, beat Pitt, lost to Stanford, beat Cal, lost to Tennessee, lost to Arkansas. So basically, they lose to good teams on the road for the most part. North Carolina without Caleb Wilson. Look, you lose your best player. You know, and again, North Carolina basically is win-loss, win-loss. Beat Duke, and since then they've lost to Miami, beat Pitt, lost to NC State, beat Syracuse. So they haven't really beat a team of Louisville's quality since Wilson got hurt. Louisville's 3.5-point favorite. Without Wilson, I will take Louisville in the points. And North Carolina might win a close game. I think Louisville will cover the 3.5. So that means Louisville will win. What the hell am I saying? I'm losing my mind. Louisville will win and cover the 3.5. North Carolina without Caleb Wilson, even though the game is in Chapel Hill. I'll take Louisville. Number 5, Houston. Houston's lost 2 games in a row, okay? They got beat by Iowa State, and then they lost to Arizona. The last game was at home. Now, Houston will go on the road against Kansas. Kansas is not in a good mood either. So you got 2 annoyed teams playing. Kansas, this was just one of those weird, how the hell did that happen, games. Kansas and Cincinnati were playing a close game, and then the Bearcats blew out Kansas, and that game was in Lawrence. Just weird. Kansas has lost 2 of 3. The whole thing with Darren Peterson. Is he going to play? Is he not going to play? How many minutes is he going to play? It's just a thing. Kansas has not lost a Monday night, big Monday type ESPN game under Bill Self. I don't believe. And that's like, what, about 85 years? But Houston, they're desperate. They've lost 2 in a row. I think Houston goes into Kansas and wins. Outright. So, that's kind of what I'm seeing with the wagering. I will take Louisville to cover at North Carolina, the 3.5. And I will take Houston on the road to cover the 1.5. Hey, I got 2 road teams, so that means I have no chance of being right. 0 chance of being right. All right, before we get out of here, interesting little tidbit of information. Danny White, the athletic director at Tennessee, has been one of the few folks for a while now who's been talking about collective bargaining in college athletics. White is for it. He's all for it. He knows it won't be easy. It's going to be clunky. It might be called something different than a collective bargaining agreement, but it has to, something like that has to be done in college athletics. Now, NCAA President Charlie Baker met with the media the other day, discussed several topics, including the potential of a collective bargaining agreement in college athletics. Baker pushed back on that idea that simply implementing a CBA is a simple answer to these issues. Baker said that a federal law would need to be passed in order to put that into place. Tennessee AD Danny White, though, did not agree with Baker's claims, sharing 3 points against the NCAA president's response. He listed them on Twitter. First one, you don't have to get a federal law passed to build a collective bargaining construct to save college sports. It's actually the only solution we have that doesn't involve asking Congress to give us a pass on the Sherman Act. 2, nobody has said collective bargaining will be simple. There are no simple solutions to this problem. Clearly, asking Congress to save us has not proven to be a simple solution either. Bam. 3, not pursuing all avenues to solve our dysfunctional system is negligent. I agree with Danny White. Look, it won't be easy. I've read a lot of stuff by smarter people than me, because I had to look up the words. I didn't understand what they were saying. But they were like, look, some people think that collective bargaining can be done. Others don't think it would be possible in this situation. Some then say, well, look at how actors are dealt with. They have a union in Hollywood, but they aren't employees. So everybody's got an opinion, but you got to do something of this realm, because you're not going to get Congress to save you. And if you don't get something of an agreement signed by all parties, you're going to continue to go to court and fight and battle and get sued and lose and all this other stuff. Now, again, the question would be, if you're a player, why would you want to sign a collective bargaining agreement? It's a wild, wild west. You can sue and do this and do that and get eligibility and get NIL money and do all sorts. Why would you want to sign an agreement that could hamper you? That's something we never talk about. I'm just thinking like a player. If I'm thinking like a player, well, hell, I got unlimited transfer opportunities now. I can get NIL money. Anything the NCAA tries to put into any kind of rule, I can just take it to court, and usually you can beat them because of the NCAA, and they stink in court. Why do I want to sign this thing again? Then you got teams with all the money and the advantages, teams like Texas Tech and Texas, Ohio State. Like, why do we want to sign a CBA? We like the Wild Wild West. It's good for us. So why do we want to get involved in all this? So that's what you're dealing with also in this whole scenario we just don't talk about. We think everybody's going to come to the table and be happy and want to do this. That's not the case, because the Wild Wild West and the dysfunction with no rules does benefit some folks. So you got to give these people an incentive to give up what they think is an advantage and sign up to some kind of collective bargaining agreement. Hey, thanks a lot for hanging out with us. Appreciate you, like always. Thanks to Coach Paul Maneri from Gamecocks Baseball for spending time with us as well. It's a post-game show.